Our study of the Psalms continues today with Psalm 101. And I would invite you to consider the guiding principles here for life and friendships. Psalm 101 and Psalm 105 is the scripture reading. The devotional will be taken from Psalm 101. Well, singing and thanksgiving, as you notice, is continuing to be the theme of our scripture reading and our devotions in the book of Psalms. Now, the title of Psalm 101 credited David as its author. Now, the writer of Psalm 105 was not named. Psalm 101, however, will be the focus of our Bible study. Now, imagine living under a ruler whose passion was not his career or legacy, but foremost his love and gratitude for the Lord. Such were the golden years of David's reign in Jerusalem. Now, this psalm's date and setting are unknown, but I believe it was in the early years of the king's reign, if not the very beginning of his reign over Israel. Now, the purpose and overriding theme of Psalm 101 was a song of praise for the mercy and judgment of the Lord. Now, notice the king's assertions concerning his conduct and choices, Psalm 101 and verse 2 through 8. Now, you will notice 9 assertive I will statements and 6 shall statements. Look with me at Psalm 101. Now, David, you'll notice, vowed to live a righteous life, verses 1 through 3. Now, after David declared, I will sing of mercy and judgment unto the Lord, in verse 1, he then vowed to behave himself in a, quote, perfect way, that is blameless, and conduct his life with a perfect or innocent heart, verse 3. Now, the king modeled a conviction that you and I should embrace and even declare, and it is this: I will set no wicked thing before mine eyes. You see, he was resolute in his conviction, and he said, I hate the work of them that turn aside, in verse 3. Now think about it. How much would your life and family change if you dedicated yourself to David's standard of personal holiness and righteousness? Perhaps we should ask, have you set your heart to take a higher moral road, even if it means walking alone? Remember, what you tolerate in yourself, you will accept in others. Your leniency will inevitably infect and affect your life and family. And so David adopted guiding principles and convictions, verses 4 and 5, and then verse 7. Now, though Psalm 101 was penned 3,000 years ago, you'll notice that the guiding principles observed in the King's Psalm should resonate in the hearts of all believers. David's I will and I shall statements leave no room for uncertainty. He was a man of conviction, and as king, there were always those who desired his favor and sought power and position in his administration. David understood that those closest to him would influence him with their counsel and character. And so Psalm 101 in verse 4 and 5 and verse 7 recorded the character and manner of men the king determined not to tolerate in his court. Now, the following character traits were cause for disqualification in the king's government. David, we understand from our reading now, he would not indulge the company of a froward heart, literally a crooked or deceitful heart, or a wicked or evil person, nor the slanderer, a gossip, proud and self-indulgent. None of those had a place in his household or in his administration as king. In fact, all liars and deceivers were unwelcomed in the king's court, according to verse 7. Then look with me at the spiritual qualifications for the servants to the king. You find those in verse 6. Now, so far, Psalm 101 has focused on qualities the king determined were undesirable and cause for disqualification in his inner circle. Now we find in Psalms 101 and verse 6 two prerequisite qualities the king required in his servants. The first, he writes, "Mine eyes shall be upon the faithful of the land, that they may dwell with me. He that walketh in a perfect way, he shall serve me." And so the men that David desired in his fellowship and company were faithful, tried, and true men of conviction. He asked of those who served him what he demanded of himself, and that is to live, quote, in a perfect way. The word walketh, you find here in verse 6, gives an accurate insight into the character of the servants of the king. Now, regardless of their talents, their gifts, or birth, or the standard to serve in David's household was blameless. A blameless testimony and an obedience to the laws and the judgments of the Lord. Well, a closing thought for you today. David did more, you see, than declare the qualifications and disqualifications of those who served him. He determined to oppose wickedness and actively said, "I will early destroy," literally silence, "all the wicked of the land, that I may cut off," literally exterminate, "all wicked doers from the city of the Lord." Can you imagine? Imagine how different our world, how different our nation would be if political and spiritual leaders were bound to that same standard. If we had leaders who were not only intolerant of sin in themselves, but actively opposed the sins and wickedness of others. The greatness of our nations would be restored if spiritual and political leaders were men and women of integrity. In fact, every government in the world would have to clean house if we, the people, refuse to tolerate liars, slanderers, the proud, and deceivers. And tragically, the failed character of leaders is essentially a reflection of those they serve. Let us follow David's example and adopt spiritual principles and biblical convictions to guide our lives and families. Let us determine to live blameless lives and to keep our hearts pure and innocent, according to verse 3. But remember, you have the responsibility to decide who or what influences your life and family. Who are the influences and influencers in your life? Well, as you can tell, today's devotional really has a practical application and an implication for you and for me as we live in the year 2023. Can you imagine what Washington would be like if we had leaders not only who had the highest standard for themselves to be men of integrity, but who opposed actively the wickedness and the evil in other men? Well, may that be our challenge. We can't do so much about Washington, but we can certainly do something about our own circle of friends and who is influencing us. Well, thank you for being a part of our daily devotion. I pray that it's been a challenge to you today, and I wish you God's blessing. Bye-bye.